Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Chapter 81 Luck X Ability X Changes in the Ruins. It's really exciting. I don't know what the owner of this ruin left behind. Jin showed a look of expectation, and walked deep into the ruins. As for Luo Lin, he had roughly guessed what the owner of the ruin left behind. After all, judging from the mural inside the ruins, what is left in the ruins is likely to be something related to the Dark Continent. The biggest possibility is the intelligence of the Dark Continent. And with the danger of the Dark Continent, it is understandable that the owner would be so entangled when he built the ruins. But since he chose to build this relic, it means that the owner of the relic still prefers to be discovered by others. But if someone discovered it, the owner of the ruins obviously had his own considerations. Luck, an ability. It is luck to be able to see animals entering the ruins in such a remote place, but ability is required to enter this well. The ability is not enough. Even if you find this place, you can't take away what he left behind. Luck, an ability. Luo Lin was thoughtful. The internal situation of the ruins captured by the mobile phone before is obviously not worth the thought of the owner of the ruins. So, either it is the same as his previous guess, there are some things in this ruins that only humans can get. Or, the things in the ruins have been taken away. After all, there is that kind of message in the ruins. When mentioning this message, Luo Lin couldn't help but look at Jin twice. After all, no matter how you look at that cartoon head, it is Jin. While Luo Lin was thinking, he and Jin had already reached the real entrance of the ruins. After all, even if Jin stopped and studied the surrounding, divine characters, the passage was only more than 10 meters long, and it would soon come to an end. However, whether it was Luo Lin or Jin, neither of them was in a hurry to enter the door at this time. It's right here. Jin stopped, and the flashlight in his hand shone back and forth in the empty room. Before entering the door, he took a clear look at the murals on the wall of the room. And the wall facing their entrance was the one that Luo Lin had seen before, the wall engraved with the gate of the Dark Continent. Jin couldn't help but pause. It turned out to be such a thing, what a surprise. Jin murmured, and the expression on Jin's face became even more joyful. Obviously, he also recognized the door. This point, Luo Lin is not surprising. As Jin, who has always been eager to go to the Dark Continent, if he doesn't even know the gate of the Dark Continent, it would be a joke. How about it, Jin, now you don't think this transaction is extortion? Luo Lin said with a chuckle from the side. Certainly, Jin nodded, his eyes shining in surprise on both sides of the ruins room. Even those extremely crude carvings did not disappoint him in the slightest. The information from the Dark Continent, even if it looks crude, can still yield a lot of useful information. What's more, there are written records under those crude pictures. After the translation of those words is completed, there must be many good things. I'm going in, maybe there will be some danger inside, do you want to follow along? Jin looked at the ruins for a while, then turned around and said. Of course we have to go in. Luo Lin said directly. Isn't this the reason why he stayed until now? As for the danger, he has completed the stand-in ability, and he has stored nearly 1,000,000 mind energy in the mind beast. He really doesn't think this ruin will be that dangerous. Hearing Luo Lin's agreement, Jin didn't say much. Afterwards, Jin Zhou exuded a strong thought energy and firmly protected himself. The same is true for Luo Lin, releasing his thoughts to the greatest extent and protecting himself with strength. Then, the two walked towards the room in the ruins together. And the moment the two stepped into Higuei, the originally dim room brightened instantly, not because of the flashlight in Jin's hand, but because of the soft light emitted by the surrounding walls. Jin froze for a moment, and quickly turned off the flashlight in his hand. Sure enough, even without the light source of the flashlight, the empty room was completely lit up. Afterwards, thoughts gradually seeped out from the simple and abstract sculptures. Under the gaze of Luo Lin and Jin, the surrounding walls were completely covered by Nian Qi, and Luo Lin couldn't help being a little astonished by the huge amount of Nian Qi. It is absolutely impossible for someone to infuse this level of energy at once, but it took an unknown amount of time to complete it. Really, he is not the only one who can think of storing and using Nian Qi. Luo Lin thought to himself, but he wasn't too vigilant. Although the energy of the thoughts is very large, it can be seen that those are pure thoughts without the slightest evil thoughts, not after-death thoughts or anything else. And at the moment when the surrounding walls were completely covered by thoughts, rays of light bloomed, and the intense but not dazzling rays of light covered 4.9 the entire room. In the next moment, the entire room seemed to become a pure white boundless space. Luo Lin and Jin became vigilant at the same time. It can be confirmed that it is not for attack, which means that the ruins are absolutely safe. Even if it wasn't for the two of them who could still see the portal standing upright behind them when they came in, the two of them might be more vigilant at this time. The pure white boundless space only appeared for a few seconds, and then it changed into another scene. Clouds evade the sun, the violent sea roars behind, the earth is pitch black and full of dead silence, but in front of Luo Lin and Jin is an extremely majestic and huge portal. That is, Gateway to the Dark Continent. Chapter 82. The roaring sea, the gloomy sky, the dark and dead land, and the high wall that cannot be seen at a glance in the distance. Here it is. Luo Lin was vigilant in his heart and glanced around. It's an illusion, Jin suddenly said at this time. His palm was groping beside him. Obviously there was an empty space in front of him, but Jin's palm could not be stretched out. Luo Lin remembered that if there were no changes in front of him, where should have been the wall of this relic secret room? It really is an illusion. Luo Lin's heart moved slightly, and he looked into the distance. Over there was an endless, high wall that could not be seen at a glance, and there was a familiar door right where they were facing. That's the portal to the Dark Continent. So, the secret room in the ruins is actually a large projection hall. Luo Lin thought. It should be right. Jin also nodded, but at this moment, his eyes kept scanning and observing around. After all, this is the gateway to the Dark Continent, even if it is a fantasy, but this is the first time he has seen a place so close to the Dark Continent with his own eyes. Just as the two of them were trying their best to observe their surroundings, in the roaring sea, a small boat was rushing across the waves. Soon, the boat docked, and a handsome young man in ancient costumes got off the boat, looking towards the portal of the Dark Continent with his head held high. Just when the young man walked to the gate of the Dark Continent, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, and then he saw the young man handing something out, and after a while of talking, the young man pushed open the gate and stepped into the dark mainland. Unfortunately, however, because everything here is an illusion, Luo Lin and Jin are trapped in the size of the secret room. They can only watch from a distance, and they can't get close to it at all, so they haven't heard any relevant information. Even because the young man kept his back to their side, he couldn't even lip sync. As for the figure that looked like a gatekeeper, the other party simply didn't have a mouth. Just as the young man pushed the door and the door closed, the scene in front of them suddenly disappeared and returned to a pure white space as if it had appeared. So, this is just for us to see. Luo Lin was a little speechless, and suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. At this time, Jin and Luo Lin felt similarly. Just as the two looked at each other, the scene in front of them began to change again. This time, the scene was an endless forest, and behind him was the same vast wilderness. It was still the young man, wearing an outfit similar to that of Jin at this time, walking from the wilderness towards the forest. And as the young man walked towards the forest in the distance seemed to have launched a grand welcome ceremony. The earth trembled, and in the originally peaceful forest, a giant creature shaped like a dinosaur, but with 8 legs, slowly got up and walked, and the ancient jungle trees tens of meters high reached the position of the opponent's leg joints. In the next second, above the sky, a huge fly-like insect with 4 pairs of wings suddenly attacked, directly hugged the huge dinosaur in its arms, and pierced the opponent's body with sharp teeth. The dinosaur-like creature, before he could even scream, he tilted his head and died. But at the moment when the huge insect was about to fly away with the dinosaur, the ground was torn apart, and the mouth with its 7 or 8 petals tore apart the ground, suddenly wrapped the huge insect and the dinosaur together, and a huge worm soared into the sky and then fall back to the ground. Afterwards, the vegetation surged, and the open area caused by the battle between the giant beasts was instantly covered by the jungle, and the previous calm was restored, as if nothing had happened. And all this happened in front of Luo Lin, Jin, and the young man in the illusion. The young man in the illusion paused, then continued walking towards the forest. Looking at this scene, Luo Lin could say that he was just watching some sci-fi blockbuster, without much sense of reality. But at this time, Jin was full of excitement, looking at everything in the picture. He could not replace the young man himself. As the young man stepped into the forest, the picture disappeared again, and the pure white was restored. After The space changes several times. The scenes that appeared in front of Luo Lin and Jin were also different, such as a vast lake like an ocean, a wasteland with towering strange rocks, and endless mountains without a blade of grass. And in those scenes, the only thing that appeared was the scene of a young man stepping into it without hesitation. After about 20 minutes, the scene changed more than a dozen times before it returned to the original secret room. But whether it is Luo Lin or Jin, the mood is very surging at this time, and it is difficult to calm down. Looking at the sculptures in the room again, the sculptures that were originally abstract paintings now have specific shapes in their eyes. Well, if you pay attention a little bit, you can actually see that the scenes just now correspond to the pictures in this room. Neither Luo Lin nor Jin are the kind of people who are always passionate, and soon they calmed down again. Then think about it carefully. The scene of the man rushing to the desperate situation just now is very handsome and exciting, but it seems there is nothing else useful. No, there is absolutely nothing else useful. Luo Lin recalled his memory carefully. He can be sure that apart from knowing the appearance of some creatures and plants in the Dark Continent, he didn't think of anything useful. This thing should be the record of the ruin builder's adventures in various places in the Dark Continent. Luo Lin said a little speechlessly. You know the Dark Continent? Jin looked at Luo Lin in surprise. Know a little. Luo Lin nodded. That's good, I don't need to bother to explain to you. Jin turned his head to look at the surrounding murals and said, don't praise the things here. The beginning of the adventure record is almost the same. If you insist on using adventure records to describe 520 words, it is probably written by a person. I opened a door to a magical place. I came to a dangerous forest. Except for the opening sentence, the following is it's all blank. Kim gave a very vivid metaphor. That's what you say, but seeing how excited you are now, I'm afraid I'm really going to record the adventure for you, and I'm afraid you're not happy about it. Luo Lin glanced at Jin. As he said, the excitement on Jin's face at this time, eager to try, has been completely undisguised. Jin's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, isn't this a matter of course? Adventure, of course, will only be interesting if you experience it yourself. I'm different from you. I still prefer to watch other people go on adventures. Luo Lin shrugged and said, then walked to the corner of the secret room of the ruins. Come here, this is where there are those messages. Luo Lin said to Jin. Hearing Luo Lin's words, Jin's eyes lit up immediately, and he hurried over to Luo Lin's side. You should find a craftsman with good craftsmanship to carve it, or leave more written records. What are these engraved? I can't understand it at all. Stupid. At the end of this string of text, there is a cartoon avatar very similar to Jin. If Luo Lin felt the same way when looking at this string of text before the illusion appeared, he doesn't feel the same way now. Only, did the person who left this string of text not see the previous phantom? Chapter 83. You should find a craftsman with good craftsmanship to carve it, or leave more written records. What are these engraved? I can't understand it at all. Stupid. Interesting. Looking at the traces of handwriting, it should be left over 400 years ago. Jin read this passage softly, especially when he looked at the last cartoon head. His face showed a look of all thoughts. This person probably didn't know how to get in here, not his real body. Luo Lin guessed in his heart. If it was the same as him before, if he came in with the beast, then he would indeed not be able to see the previous image. In this way, it is only natural to leave such a paragraph. However, no, he saw the illusion from before. At this moment, Jin denied Luo Lin's guess. This made Luo Lin startled and a little confused. Since he saw the illusion, why did he leave this string of text? Luo Lin wondered. Probably, laughing at those who were lucky enough to discover this place but were unable to come in and see the carvings in the ruins through other means. Jin stared at the cartoon and surrendered thoughtfully. Quote. Did Yinda hear that? This string of words is mocking you, it's mocking you. As for the evidence, Jin said as he stroked the string of words, the thought energy on his fingertips covered the string of words smoothly, and finally stopped in front of the cartoon head. Luo Lin looked at the scene where the thoughts covered the text, and couldn't help but think of the scene where the thoughts seeped from the wall just now. In the next moment, the cartoon portrait of Jin suddenly lit up, just like the lit-up walls around, and then, the light bloomed and projected out. This is... Luo Lin was stunned. Jin, who was next to him, grinned. Sure enough, the person who left the message not only saw the illusion, but also thoroughly studied the rules of the illusion, and left this real message. It's amazing. Luo Lin was speechless. He didn't want to say anything anymore, just quietly watching the projected light. The light surged several times, and finally, like a projection lamp, a light curtain slowly formed in front of the two of them, and within the light curtain, a figure slowly walked over. The moment Luo Lin saw the figure, Luo Lin turned to look at Jin. You also said you never came. Open black lens bracket latecomers, since you can see this video of me, you must be an adventurer who solved all the puzzles like me, close black lens bracket. And as an adventurer, you must have heard my name, Higashi Fulatian. Close black lens bracket. Eastern Free SS. Isn't that Jin's ancestor, the most mysterious hunter in the hunter world, who left a record of the Dark Continent and is thought to be alive? Luo Lin turned his head to look at Jin, but at this moment, Jin looked at the influence without the slightest surprise. Is this already known? Luo Lin murmured to himself. As the greatest adventurer in history, Idong Free CSS found a new place worthy of adventure in this place. Although I don't know where it is yet, he must exist somewhere in the world. Close black lens bracket. In this case, I will definitely find it and conquer it, but I will not be as stingy as the guy in this ruins. The diary is hidden so secretly, I will definitely publish my adventure diary. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The descendants who find this place will probably be very disappointed. Everything recorded in this ruin has been found by someone earlier, and it has become a well-known place. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. But don't worry, the owner of this ruin is a reward. I didn't take the reward for finding and stepping into this ruin. Great adventurers don't need the spoils of other adventurers, so you can take them as a souvenir. Close black lens bracket. Although this thing is probably not considered precious in your era. Close black lens bracket. Dong Free CSS finished talking to himself for a while, and then amidst a burst of laughter, the image disappeared. I said, Jin, are your family's genes so strong? Luo Lin couldn't help but ask. Hey, do you know this is my ancestor? Jin showed a surprised expression at this time. Isn't that obvious enough? Almost the same looks, same last name, same bad temper. The last sentence Luo Lin said in his heart. Haha, that's right. Jin scratched his head and laughed foolishly. That's right, that should be my ancestor. It seems that the ancestor first learned about the Dark Continent here, and had the idea of exploring the Dark Continent. It shouldn't be said that he is determined. Jin propped his chin, and couldn't help showing a smile on his face. It's really arrogant. I just learned of the existence of the Dark Continent, and I already believe that I will be able to conquer the Dark Continent. That's why I said that your family's genes are strong. Luo Lin said to Jin, then turned and walked towards the middle of the secret room. Gold. Does that mean he's just as arrogant? Seems like that's the case. That's all right. It should be here. Luo Lin took a look at the middle of the secret room, found another place and squatted down, covered his fingers with thoughts and nodded. Then, with the movement of Luo Lin's fingers, Nianqi covered the ground, lighting up the patterns that looked like lines on the floor. Hey, you have also learned it. Jin was a little surprised when he saw Luo Lin's movements. After all, I've read it twice. If I still can't learn it, that's too much. Luo Lin said casually. That's true. Jin Shen nodded approvingly. It is indeed not difficult to learn. This is similar to the difficulty of the small game of tangling and the game of Nianshou. It is just a little game skill of applied skills. At this time, accompanied by Luo Lin's action, a string of divine symbols lit up, and then the floor of the secret room was opened, and a pillar rose slowly. At the same time, a figure appeared on the side of the pillar. It was the owner of the ruins. However, compared with the previous images, the owner of the ruins in this image is already old. Latecomers, since you can enter here and find the gift I left behind, from Zhao, it means that you have passed the test. Next, I will go to that place again. I think this should also be where did I venture out for the last time. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. I have seen the danger over there, so I shouldn't have left everything in this place, but if you can crack the small mechanism I set up, you should also have the qualifications to go to that place. I don't know if you know that place, but no matter what, the image left here should be your indicator of progress. Open black lens bracket. By the way, you don't think I'm going to die in that place for the last time, right? Haha, sir, I'm not going to die. I just decided to go deep and never return to this boring place. If you choose where to go, maybe we will meet again one day. Close black lens bracket. Accompanied by the same arrogant laughter, the image disappeared. Only a half-person high stone pillar was left, and several seemingly inconspicuous stones of different sizes on the pillar. Chapter 84. The image disappears, but the laughter in the secret room of the ruins still echoed for a few seconds before stopping. After all, it is the original owner of the ruins, and the treatment is much better than those who intervene temporarily like Dong Frisi SS. Certainly, in terms of technology, in fact, the temporary insertion of Frisi SS into the operating rules of this relic seems to be more clever. Arrogant, really too arrogant. Jin now looked filled with righteous indignation. You actually said that the world here is boring, and it's a gift for those who come after. Who would value something like you? Isn't that right? Jin said, turning his head to look at Luo Lin. You don't like it? Then I'll take it all away. Luo Lin looked at Jin with surprise and said. Kim was silent. No, I want it. Jin nodded directly. Luo Lin rolled his eyes. So, I want you to say a fart. Then divide it into 3 parts. Luo Lin looked at the several stones on the platform and divided them up. 1 largest stone, 1 small stone when one is medium, and then the rest of the small stones. 3 copies like this should be about the same. That's no problem. Luo Lin looked at Jin and said. Yes. Jin nodded to 923, you choose first. Then Yinda's share, I will send it to him when I find a chance. Luo Lin nodded. Good. As he said that, he reached out to touch the second portion, a medium-sized stone and a small stone, big and small, comprehensive. By the way, Jin, do you know what this stone is? Luo Lin naturally had some guesses about the stone, but he didn't dare to confirm it. I don't know what you want so much. Jin curled his lips and said, it should be the unmanned stone, I'm not sure, but I'll know when I go out and soak in the water. By the way, you know what the unmanned stone is. I know that. Luo Lin nodded, carefully looking at the stone in his hand. It seems inconspicuous, not much different from common stones, but who would have thought that this is a treasure from the Dark Continent? The No Man Stone, corresponding to the educating beast in the 5 great disasters, is a treasure from the Dark Continent. It is said that when a stone the size of a string of beads sinks into the water, it can release 20,000 kilowatts of electricity a day, which is commonly known as 20,000 kilowatt-hours of electricity. Of course, don't think that 20,000 kilowatt-hours of electricity is too little. You should know that even the Earth before Luo Lin traveled, according to the statistics of some organizations, the annual power consumption is 25 trillion kilowatt-hours, which is about 68 ATKA, 500 million kilowatt-hours per day. And an unmanned stone the size of a bead can generate 20,000 degrees of electricity per day. That is to say, the power generation capacity of 3,425,000 unmanned rocks. If the size of the unmanned stone is a beaded bead, it is calculated as a cube with a diameter of 2 cm and a length and width of 2 cm. There are 125,000 unmanned rocks per cubic meter, which means that the power generation capacity of 27.4 cubic meters of unmanned rocks is enough to supply the electricity consumption on the Earth. And the unmanned stone is an ore on the Dark Continent, which can be called an ore, and it is conceivable that there are definitely a lot of them. To a certain extent, the treasure hidden there is not an exaggeration to call it endless energy. If this is really an uninhabited stone, then the owner of this ruin is really generous. Luo Lin sighed with emotion. The unmanned stone in his hand is as big as an adult's fist, and the small one is as big as a baby's fist. If you put it in the water to generate electricity, hundreds of thousands of degrees of electricity will be generated every day. Even if you just open a power station, you can earn a lot of money if you sell it for a day. Rather than being generous, it's better to say that this stone is of little value to him. Jin said casually. No value. Luo Lin froze for a moment, but soon he realized it. You mean that there is no use of unmanned rocks in that era? That's right. Jin nodded and said, the age of this relic is still unknown, but my ancestor Dong Frisi SS lived at least 300 years ago, and his message may have been left 400 years earlier. Electricity, as the main energy source in the world, will only happen within 100 years. This thing is really of little value to them. No wonder it is a small gift. Luo Lin suddenly said. It's a small gift to them, but it's of great value to us. If a small piece is sold to a professional organization, it can sell at least several billion ringtones. Jin threw the unmanned rock in his hand. It seems that he chose the pile of scattered ones, but speaking of which, the pile of scattered unmanned rocks is indeed the most among the 3 copies. Boy, the good show is over, and the treasure is also in hand, should you leave? Jin turned his head to look at Luo Lin and said. It's time to leave, but before that. Luo Lin looked at Jin with a smile. Jin, what conditions do you think this secret realm can exchange for? Gold. Boy, you didn't mention the conditions before, the co-author is waiting for me here, right? Jin's eyes widened suddenly. Luo Lin nodded very simply. When Luo Lin saw the mural on the gate of the Dark Continent, he guessed that the value of this relic must not be low. That's why he was satisfied with the remuneration that Yinda and Jin negotiated. Damn, you kid must have recognized the gate of the Dark Continent. Jin also reacted. Treacherous boy, that guy Yinda didn't even recognize him. Luo Lin smiled and said nothing. Okay, I admit it, tell me your conditions. Jin looked like a hob. It seems to be saying, if you dare to raise excessive conditions, I will dare to renege. Conditions. I remember knowing a boy named Gon who has been looking for his father, and even brought a good friend of his. Luo Lin said with his chin propped up in consideration. Jin's eyes widened. You boy, don't worry, Gon and I are just common friends, I will at most tell you some news later, and let me use conditions in exchange for you to meet and find your son, I am not stupid. And that brat, I'm afraid he doesn't want to see you in this way. Luo Lin shook his head and said. Gold. Could he say that he was actually willing to agree to the condition of seeing his son just now? Okay, no kidding, I want to ask you a favor, please investigate some trends in the Hunter Association. Luo Lin said seriously. Investigate the Hunter Association. Jin frowned suddenly. Your kid should also be a professional hunter, what does the Hunter Association do? It's mainly a bad premonition. It feels like someone from the Hunter Association wants to target me. Luo Lin didn't tell the truth, but made an excuse. Premonition. Of course Jin could see that Luo Lin was not telling the truth. But lying at this time was obviously because he didn't want to tell him the real reason. He didn't ask any more questions, just. Investigation is fine, but since you don't tell the truth, I can't guarantee the details of the investigation results. Jin said straightforwardly. Yes, Luo Lin nodded. I just need to know who is targeting me. How strong is the targeting, but, Luo Lin said with an unprecedented seriousness. No matter what kind of intelligence you investigate, these 2 points are the minimum requirements. Hiss. How do I feel? Your matter is super troublesome, I'm going to lose a lot on this condition. Jin rubbed his chin and said. Then do you agree? Luo Lin asked directly. Seeing Lorraine's attitude, Jin grinned and said directly, I agree. Chapter 85. I agree. However, if things are really troublesome, I will only tell you the intensity of the targeting, how about it? Jin said. Yes. Luo Lin nodded very directly. In a blink of an eye, I forgot the so-called 2 minimum requirements. What's the lowest? Isn't that just a means of negotiating prices? I promised so happily. Jin was a little surprised, and became more and more interested. Obviously, he is more interested in investigating the whole story of this matter than the so-called conditions for agreeing to Luo Lin. And Luo Lin didn't say anything. For him, as long as he knows the strength of being targeted, he can already guess a lot of things. I'll tell you the result in 3 days at the earliest, half a month at the latest. Jin said directly. Okay. Luo Lin nodded and told Jin his contact information. After saying this, Luo Lin was about to turn around and leave, but at the moment Luo Lin walked out of the secret room, an accident appeared. The walls on both sides of the door of the secret room suddenly appeared densely packed with divine characters, and in the next moment, a ray of light directly shone on Luo Lin. The accident happened so fast, Luo Lin Yi didn't have time to react, a strange will suddenly struck, just too faint. Luo Lin didn't even feel the use of that will, and was directly washed away by his powerful mental power. Jin in the Chamber of Secrets was obviously also disturbed by this sudden change for a day. Open black lens bracket. By the way, I thought about it carefully. Although this place is very boring, it is my hometown after all. The Dark Continent is too dangerous, so this is the last test. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. It is forbidden to leave the human world and go to the Dark Continent. If you can solve this one-day commandment, then come to the Dark Continent to seek revenge from me. Haha. Close black lens bracket. The voice of the owner of the ruins sounded at the right time. Quote. What kind of old six behavior is this, riding a horse? Not to mention Luo Lin, even Jin Du was taken aback by this reversal of the owner of the ruins. Luo Lin turned around and stared at Jin Dian for a while. I think the last two words of your ancestor are scolding the owner of the ruins. Luo Lin said quietly. I think so too. Jin nodded silently. What do you think? Come and see this divine word. You won't be caught with a commandment not to go to the Dark Continent when you figure it out. Luo Lin said speechlessly. Jin also reacted, and smiled and stepped forward to investigate, but within a minute, Jin raised his head again. It's confirmed. This mechanism is aimed at the person who takes the gift, so as long as the gift is not taken away, this mechanism will not be triggered. Kim also breathed a sigh of relief. Although it's not very good to say so, it's not that he is too good to be recruited. Judging from the strength of this divine character, even if he could erase this so-called commandment, it would be very troublesome. Your ancestor was also an idiot, Luo Lin said suddenly at this time. Jin was stunned for a moment, but then he reacted. You mean, it seems that this possibility is really possible. Jin thought of his ancestor's widow. Oh no, it was a message, and he didn't have the slightest confidence to deny it. Mainly, if you think about it in another way, if you put him in the situation of his ancestors with a stone of unknown use and a small trap, he might do the same. After all, what are treasures compared to fun? Do you need a pickup service? Luo Lin suddenly looked at Jin and said. Jin, delivery service. You are sure, if you take out too many unmanned rocks, it may greatly strengthen that commandment. Jin reminded. I know, so do you need it? Luo Lin nodded, he had already thought of this. Need, Jin said decisively, although for him, when he knew that the last mechanism was aimed at the person with the no man's stone, there were many ways to avoid it. The most simple and direct way is to find someone who doesn't intend to go to the Dark Continent to help out. But he was still curious about Luo Lin's methods. After all, Luo Lin looked full of confidence. 1 billion monks, Luo Lin said directly. Okay, give me the account number. Jin said without hesitation. For the super rich, 1 billion monks are nothing. Luo Lin looked at the account information, walked back to the secret room again, and took the remaining unmanned stone from the golden phone. Luo Lin didn't go out in a hurry, but picked a small unmanned rock and threw it out. 0. Asking for flowers. Just as the no man's stone flew out of the portal, another ray of light landed on Luo Lin. However, when Luo Lin threw out one of his own no man rocks, there was no light. It's pretty smart. It can make basic judgments and only save one life, Luo Lin thought to himself. Afterwards, Ren Shi walked towards the entrance. Just when Luo Lin was about to leave, a substitute appeared behind him, carrying the so-called broken commandments. Then, the new commandment fell on Luo Lin again. Then Luo Lin returned to the secret room, did it again, used a substitute to remove the precepts, then walked out of the secret room, and removed the precepts for the third time. The stone is here, come out and get it yourself. After Luo Lin finished speaking, he left the ruins without looking back. Complete. Looking at Luo Lin who was leaving in a hurry, he finally came to his senses. Except Nen, Jin asked with a question mark. Although he guessed that since Luo Lin said to help, he must have the confidence not to be afraid of discipline. He even thought about whether Luo Lin was a complete mess, or didn't plan to go to the Dark Continent, but he never imagined that he would see such a neat removal of Nen. Dementors are quite a rare means. You must know that no matter how big the Hunter Association is, there are no more than 5 fingers of deminers. As far as Jin knew, there was none except Nian who was so clean and neat. It looks like I need to pay more attention to the investigation. Jin propped his chin and muttered to himself. Leaving the ruins, Luo Lin looked at the sun above his head and breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he didn't care much about what happened in the end. Although that commandment will affect him a little, it is only a harmless level. Taking the initiative to use a substitute to remove the ability, with twice the consumption of Nianchi, 3 substitutes only consumed 20,000 Nianchi. Of course, this kind of harmless restriction can consume 20,000 gas, which is already very powerful. But in comparison, Luo Lin probably understood the outrageous level of the Nen creation he had eliminated before. Really, I don't want to go to the new world in such a hurry before completing the basic guarantee. Luo Lin narrowed his eyes slightly. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 86. Time flies. A week flies by. Because of the unexpected harvest in the forest before, Luo Lin didn't have to deliberately go to the city to show his presence. Just waiting for the results of Jin's investigation is enough. Of course, it's not Luo Lin's trust money. In the face of his situation, Lu Lin dare not say who he can absolutely trust. But he could try to trust. Anyway, the worst result is that you can't win, and you can't lose if you lose. And the longer the time dragged on, the more beneficial it would be for him, after all, with his progress speed. It won't be long before he becomes the strongest in the world in terms of personal force. Even if you give him enough time to grow up, it is not difficult for one person to fight against the country, or even 4 against the whole world. When 470 is true, it is only the foreseeable future. Now Luo Lin is still carrying out the next step of cultivation in the forest. However, Luo Lin's daily practice now, apart from in-depth practice on each Nen system, is mainly to conceive a new Nen. Of course, it's an idea, but Luo Lin has already thought about what kind of abilities Luo Lin wants, but Luo Lin has been considering that the Nen system is more suitable for developing the abilities he wants. As he thought at the beginning, his Nen development direction, in addition to the current ability to prevent being plotted, the more important thing is actually how to get more experience. Although Nen is miraculous, Luo Lin knows very well that the system is the basis for him to travel through other worlds. Therefore, the ability to gain experience is the real top priority. It even said that if it wasn't for being discovered by Netero, it would prevent being directly killed by the Nen of this world. What's more, if there are a series of possibilities such as unconscious coma, being manipulated by emitter Nen, etc., if he cannot travel through, Luo Lin will not be the first to develop the substitute ability. Open black lens bracket 100 level ascension system close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket name, Luo Lin close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket level, 2 385 3000ths close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket vitality, 2 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket spiritual power, 2 close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket Nen, 7321 73211ths close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket world, Hunter x Hunter close black lens bracket. The ability to gain more experience, is it more powerful? Luo Lin looked at the system panel he hadn't seen for a long time, with a look of thought in his eyes. The biggest source of his current experience is the practice of daily practice, except that he cannot maintain the practice with 7 or 8 hours of sleep every day. For the remaining 16 hours, Luo Lin has been practicing for almost 15 hours, that is to say, Luo Lin can now gain 15 points of experience a day. No, don't worry about this ability. Luo Lin shook his head slightly. Although developing this ability can speed up the efficiency of gaining experience, his current potential capacity has not yet reached that level. At the very least, his potential chi should reach the level of 115,000 chi after 16 hours of practice, when he needs to develop this ability. Or, he's able to develop a biscuit-like ability to regenerate quickly. While practicing, consuming the mind energy of the body, on the other hand, using the ability to restore the physical strength of the body and recover the mind energy consumed. One increase and one decrease, reaching the level of perpetual practice, he can also start to develop more advanced abilities. And this ability is also among the ability options that Luo Lin is currently preparing to develop. As for the third ability that Luo Lin is considering developing, it is the ability to gain experience from another path, which is the way that Luo Lin has long abandoned, the way to gain experience through exercising. After Luo Lin was promoted to level IV2, Luo Lin found that under normal circumstances, it was difficult for him to gain experience through physical exercise. But at that time, because his workout intensity was not enough for his body. As long as the intensity of the exercise can be strengthened, the efficiency of his experience gain can still return to the previous 20 points of experience per day. And there is another benefit to developing the ability to exercise your body. That is to fully tap the potential of his body. Although at the time of Vitality 1, Biscuit said that his physical fitness has reached the peak of human beings. But in fact, Luo Lin can clearly feel that the potential of his body has not been released at all. Peak human physicality. That's the limit of a human being in this world. But for him, that level of physical fitness is just the beginning of Vitality 1, not to mention that Luo Lin's vitality is already 2 now. However, because of the influence of thoughts, his current physical endurance has far exceeded the pure physical fitness. This has led to the problem of exercise. He can no longer find an exercise method suitable for his current physical fitness. That's why he would consider developing an ability to assist in training. As for what kind of ability it is, naturally, it is the eternal gravity training method. That's right, the second ability that Lu Lin is considering developing is omnipotence. However, this is currently the most difficult ability for Luo Lin to develop. After all, even if Luo Lin doesn't consider the development of the ability to restore physical strength, he definitely needs to strengthen the ability of fat. And this has taken over Nen's enhancer system. It is not advisable to directly strengthen the gravity, and the remaining conjurer and emitter, these two systems, Luo Lin can't imagine how to develop the gravity ability at all. Do you turn mind energy into gravity or use emitter ability to manipulate gravity? Of the two, no matter which one, Luo Lin is not sure. In fact, with Nen's magic, it is not impossible for these two systems to develop the ability to become gravity or 4.1 to manipulate gravity. But this first requires the Nen to believe it himself. Unfortunately, Luo Lin didn't believe it. As Luo Lin, who crossed over from the materialist world, although he also learned Nen, subconsciously, he knew very well what the essence of gravity is. So he couldn't understand how to turn Nian Qi into gravity, or use Nian Qi to manipulate gravity. And the influence of the subconscious, which also made it impossible for Luo Lin to develop this ability with Nen, who has a idealistic color. This is also the focus of Luo Lin's troubles recently. Chapter 87. If it doesn't work, just give up this development direction for now. Luo Lin sighed slightly. After all, even if this world doesn't get the ability to manipulate gravity, the next world will always have a chance. Although I haven't traveled through it, but considering that Luo Lin has traveled to the Hunter world now, other animations should also be in the category of time traveling. And in many worlds, gravity is a very common ability. For him now, after all, it is more appropriate to gain experience more and faster, and pursue upgrades. Fitness, just put it there and it won't go away if you work out later. After Luo Lin figured this out, he didn't plan to get entangled anymore, and directly decided to develop the ability to restore physical strength next. However, before that, let's finish the training results of the past few days first. Luo Lin's mind moved slightly, and his Nian Qi condensed his Nian beast beside him. As soon as the little whale-shaped kun appeared, he happily wandered in midair. With Luo Lin beckoning, it slowly fell into Luo Lin's hands. During the 7 days, of course he wasn't all entangled in what ability to develop, but he was about to complete the new ability at 03, and he was just thinking about the next goal of cultivation. It's just a little bit away, and the space is completely completed. Luo Lin closed his eyes, feeling the small space in his Nian beast's body, with a smile on his face. That's right, during these 7 days, Luo Lin's practice was to create a space in Kun's body. After all, as a traveler, how can there be no storage space? But his system has no other redundant functions besides allowing him to upgrade and travel, so Luo Lin can only be pinched by himself. And his Nian beast is a kun, although it doesn't have the ability to transform into a peng, but it can swallow everything, so it makes sense to have a space in its body. Transmuter's ability users are also very good at manipulating space, so Transmuter's mind beast carrying space is also very suitable. Logically, his Nian beast became the carrier of space. Luo Lin felt the fist-sized space gradually forming and stabilizing in Kun's body, and suddenly smiled. Finished. Luo Lin satisfactorily felt the space in Kun's body. Although the space was small, Luo Lin didn't care at all. After all, this is not the final size of the space, but it can grow, and the space can be expanded only by consuming thoughts. When Luo Lin set it up, he didn't set an upper limit for this space, that is to say, theoretically, this space can expand infinitely. That's why Luo Lin spent 7 days. Otherwise, with 190% transmuter qualification, just open up a storage space, and it can be completed in a day at most. Try to see the consumption of expansion. Luo Lin's mind moved slightly, thinking that the cold air stored in the beast's body would continuously flow into the space in its body to expand. The space that was originally only the size of a fist expanded rapidly, and soon became a space with a length, width, and height of 1 meter. It consumes more than 98,000 gas. If the most existing space is removed, can 100,000 gas be exchanged for 1 cubic meter? It is really expensive enough. Luo Lin couldn't help but be speechless. You know, when conducting storage space development tests these days, consuming 100 gas is enough to open up a space of 1 cubic meter. As a result, just because of the increased growth characteristics, the energy consumed has increased by 1,000 times. However, compared to the characteristics of growth, it is worthwhile to consume a little more. Luo Lin nodded in satisfaction, then squatted down to pick up a stone, and threw it away. His Nian Beast Kun directly opened its mouth and swallowed the stone. Then Luo Lin could see through the connection with Nian Beast that there was a small stone in Kun's body. Although it's a bit weird to swallow, this is the most reasonable and least consuming method in Luo Lin's research. Even if you swallow something much larger than the kun, you only need to provide the Nian Qi to expand the size of the kun, and you can easily store it in. According to the new rules set by Luo Lin, the size of the space in Kun's body determines the size of Kun's body. As for the consumption of getting bigger, because of this rule, it becomes negligible. After that, Luo Lin's mind moved slightly, and his mind beast disappeared without a trace. I can't perceive the space anymore. Luo Lin felt it, and the space that he could perceive in some inexplicable way just now disappeared with the disappearance of Kun. Then Luo Lin waited silently for more than a minute before calling out Nian Beast again. Feeling the internal space of Nian Beast, Luo Lin laughed. The space is still there, and the stone hasn't changed in any way. It seems that the disappearance of the beast will not affect this space. Luo Lin then conducted tests in various ways, such as blasting the beasts to test the stability of this space. Then Luo Lin made sure that as long as he didn't take the initiative to open the space, even if his Nian Beast was hacked into pieces, it wouldn't affect the space at all. Just like the Nian Qi he stored in Nian Beast's body would not disappear because of Nian Beast's collapse. This will be considered complete. Luo Lin smiled and put some of his belongings into it. For example, no one rocks, no one rocks, no one rocks, etc. Except for the No Man Stone, Luo Lin has no other things worth putting in for the time being, but he is going to make a big purchase later. At least some survival supplies, as well as valuable gold and the like, he had to prepare a little in the space. Just after Luo Lin cancelled Nian Beast just now, Luo Lin's cell phone rang suddenly, looking at the caller number. It's Jin's call. Luo Linton laughed. Coincidentally, just as he was about to leave for a big purchase, Jin's call came. It just happened to allow him to decide whether to leave after purchasing, or to continue to practice in this world for a while longer. Luo Lin connected the phone. Hello. Chapter 88. Hi, is that Luo Lin kid? As soon as the phone was connected, Jin's carefree voice came over. It's me. How is it? Did you find out the result? Luo Lin's expression was normal, and he asked softly, but he was already fully focused in his heart, preparing to carefully analyze Jin's next words. On the other side of the phone, Jin obviously didn't know what kind of vigilance Luo Lin had become at this time, and he still said carelessly, I said Luo Lin boy, what is the principle of your sixth sense? It's really not wrong. Find it. Luo Lin narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the mobile phone in his hand. A thought storm had already started in his mind. For Jin's words at this time, Luo Lin did not hear any feeling of concealment or deceit. Obviously, he really found out that someone was targeting him. Only, it's not Netero that King tracked down on him. Luo Lin was able to confirm this. If what Jin found out was that Netero was going to target him, then Shin would definitely not have this attitude. And after so many days, Luo Lin didn't wait for the so-called attack. In fact, he already guessed that Netero might not continue to attack. Of course, it is also possible that he deliberately let him relax his vigilance, preparing to find an opportunity to take him down in one fell swoop in the future. Inside the association, someone really targeted me. Luo Lin pretended to be surprised. That's right. I also investigated for 7 whole days before I found a clue, and it turned out that your kid actually sensed it in advance, which is really amazing. Jin Tut said in amazement. Who is it? Luo Lin asked curiously. He was really curious this time. If Netero wasn't targeting him, who would the Hunter Association be targeting him? Periston, the vice president of the Hunter Association. Jin told Luo Lin directly instead of showing off. Periston, what is he doing against me? Luo Lin was startled and asked strangely. That's a long story. To put it simply, because you were paid attention to by Netero, that guy is also following you. Jin said with a little seriousness in his words. Because I'm being watched by Netero. Luo Lin listened to the reason why she was targeted with a dazed expression. What kind of bloody love triangle plot is this? Bah, he won't engage in a love triangle with a bad old man and a pervert. To do it, he has to make a love triangle with 2 beauties. Just when Luo Lin was thinking wildly, Jin didn't stop, but continued to explain. At the beginning of the investigation, I didn't understand why Periston would follow you, but then I saw a copy of you in Sky Arena, the comparison video. The video of the game in the Sky Arena. Luo Lin raised his eyebrows. There is only one game worth recording in the Sky Arena. Really, I didn't expect that you are still such a hidden genius. You can enter Zindaquan listening at will and your body can keep up with your mental speed. No wonder that old man Netero will follow you. Jin said with a sigh of relief. In the past, he was the one who was called a genius, but today, it was the first time he called someone a genius. No, it should be a monster. That kind of realm is not a realm that can be reached by pure talent. So, that Periston is after me for this kind of thing. Luo Lin was full of incomprehension. Of course, that guy has always regarded himself as the opponent of that old man Netero, and as a result Netero turned his head to stare at you, and he will naturally stare at you. Jin explained a little. Luo Lin froze for a moment, sorting out Periston's brain circuit. Is there something wrong with this guy? Luo Lin scolded directly. You're right, there's something really wrong with that guy. Jin nodded approvingly and agreed with Luo Lin. It's just that guy has faults, but that guy's ability is indeed not small. If he is watching you, you will be in trouble next time. Luo Lin. Of course he knew Periston, the super twisted person who claimed to be happy only when others hated him. Moreover, Periston himself is indeed a capable person. In the Hunter election chapter, almost everyone was tricked by him. Being targeted by this guy, Luo Lin couldn't imagine what kind of means the other party would use to target him. Damn old Netero, Luo Lin said viciously. In the final analysis, it is the old man's fault. Haha, I've already told you the matter. You kid, remember to be careful, that guy is best at making a sudden blow in some neglected places. Kim said with a smile. He didn't think Periston could do anything to Luo Lin. As a professional hunter as well, Periston has a lot of methods on the surface that cannot be used against Luo Lin. As for the secret means, I have seen Luo Lin's ability with my own eyes, plus Luo Lin's strength in the Sky Arena. It can be said that there is no need to worry about force. Periston himself is not a player who is good at fighting. The only thing that worries him is whether Periston will use some insidious means to force Luo Lin to commit a crime and become a wanted criminal to destroy Luo Lin. After a little hesitation, Jin still reminded Luo Lin. Although the contact time is not long, but Jin can see that Luo Lin will definitely not be the kind of person who suffers from boredom. And it is this kind of personality that is most likely to be plotted by those methods. Luo Lin hung up the phone. Periston, Luo Lin murmured, thinking of Jin's last reminder. The old man, Li Haojiao, told the truth. Luo Lin also thinks that he is easy to be tricked by that kind of stock. But he was really in a hurry. He would go straight to the door at worst, and leave after killing someone. He doesn't like to fight his brains with that kind of people. If he has the strength, what can he do without using his brains? I hope you'd better be a little more modest, otherwise. Luo Lin shook his head slightly, packed his luggage and prepared to leave the mountain. Now that he decided to trust Jin, Luo Lin naturally believed in Jin's findings. There are not many things to pack up. Throw the backpack or something into the space that has just been constructed, and then run to the nearest one with light packs. Only, the city in the distance in the mountains and forests is just in sight. Luo Lin stopped in his tracks and looked ahead with a cold face. I saw the mouse just after receiving the news. I really don't know whether to say it is good luck or bad luck. Come out, Luo Lin shouted towards the forest not far away. Chapter 89. Do it. With a loud shout, 5 figures in the woods threw off the camouflage cloth on their bodies and rushed directly towards Luo Lin. Looking at the 5 people in front of him, Luo Lin looked calm, then turned sideways slightly. In the next moment, a bullet passed Luo Lin directly. It can be seen that if Luo Lin hadn't dodged, the bullet would definitely hit Luo Lin in the forehead. Sniper, it's good to hide the breath. Luo Lin glanced at the direction of the bullet. Even if he dodged a shot, he couldn't determine where Fang Yin was hiding. There are traces of mind energy on the body, all of them are Nen, but, very weak, are they here to send you to death? Luo Lin glanced at the 5 people rushing towards him, and with just one glance, he could see through the reality of the 5 people. The sniper in the distance is the real killer. Luo Lin had a judgment in his mind, and ran towards the sniper in the distance, ignoring the 5 people in front of him. Kilometers away, on a certain dense bush, an unremarkable middle-aged man looked at Luo Lin in the distance through the binoculars on his right eye, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. It's really cautious. The skills are as powerful as in the intelligence, but... As he spoke, the middle-aged man pulled the trigger of the sniper rifle again with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Next moment, a bullet shot out of 010, galloping towards Luo Lin in the distance. Here we go again. Luo Lin became short, and the bullet flew directly in front of him. Luo Lin's speed did not slow down, and he galloped towards the direction of the trajectory, but... While galloping, Luo Lin recalled Nianton who just passed him by. It's a bullet-type projectile. It should be completed with the manipulator and transmuter, but the power is not strong. The bullet contains the ability of the emitter. Luo Lin quickly analyzed the information in his mind. Those who can use manipulator and transmuter at the same time are usually Nen of emitter, and the ability of emitter is usually the most domineering of the 6 systems of Nen. Once the manipulation conditions are met, even those who are Nen will be directly manipulated, which is the so-called, the victory and defeat have been decided. Unfortunately, however, what Luo Lin is most afraid of, is the conditional ability of emitter. There was a smile on the corner of Luo Lin's mouth, and the already extremely fast speed under his feet suddenly became more terrifying, and he crossed tens of meters in an instant. In just a few seconds, Luo Lin had already traveled hundreds of meters in the forest. During this process, several mind bombs were fired towards Luo Lin, but this time, under Luo Lin's rapidity, the mind bombs could not even be aimed at Luo Lin, and all of them were emptied. Found it. Although still not aware of the breath, the trajectory of several bullets in succession allowed Luo Lin to directly judge the position of the shooter, and adjusted the angle slightly. Luo Lin's original speed instantly became even more terrifying. Damn, why is the speed so outrageous? I can't see clearly at all. The middle-aged man who fired the shot cursed, threw the sniper rifle in his hand on the ground, turned around and jumped off the tree. Under the tree, a happy jeep was parked there. Opened the trunk of the jeep. In the trunk was a Gatling machine gun that had been set up a long time ago. The pitch-black body of the gun was glowing, like a silent beast, eagerly baring its fangs to tear at its prey. If it's possible, I really don't want to waste this treasure, but there's no other way. Who asked the boss to give you too high a price? The middle-aged man said softly, lying behind the Gatling gun, aiming at his body. There was an aiming gesture. Arrive. In the jungle, Luo Lin looked at the bushes not far away. It is from here that the bullet is fired. Only. The breath is hidden too well. I didn't even notice it at such a short distance. Luo Lin frowned slightly, doubts flashed in his heart. In the next moment, a cloud of thoughts blasted towards the bushes, and Luo Lin's figure jumped towards the bushes after him. Accompanied by an explosion, the bush was directly blasted by the thought energy thrown by Luo Lin, revealing the figure inside. Only, at this time, the figure was blown out, and his whole body was bloody. Surprisingly, he was seriously injured by the thought energy thrown by Luo Lin, a die. Luo Lin, who was in midair, looked at the scene in front of him, and before he had time to react, dozens of bullets burst out from a nearby bush, shooting towards Luo Lin, who was in midair. Go to hell. The middle-aged man crouching behind the Gatling machine gun looked mad, grinning and shouting frantically. Even Common's Gatling gun has a rate of fire of more than 1,000 per minute. The Gatling machine gun formed by Nen is naturally even more terrifying, and it may shoot more than 3,000 rounds per minute. That is to say, in just 1 second, more than 50 super powerful mind bombs were shot towards Luo Lin in a violent manner. Haha, die. The middle-aged man looked crazy, watching his bullets bombard Luo Lin, who jumped up. In the next second, countless bullets shot out directly through his body, piercing through Luo Lin and blasting towards the forest behind him. Under the powerful bomb attack, the forest seemed to be bombed, and dozens of big trees were directly torn to pieces in an instant. It's really simple. If I knew it earlier, I wouldn't have wasted Precious's ammunition. The middle-aged man looked at Luo Lin, who was torn apart by his bullets, with a sinister smile on his face. However, the next second, the grin on his face froze. The Luo Lin who was torn into pieces in midair did not explode into blood mist as he imagined, but slowly dissipated. Fake. The middle-aged man reacted instantly, and quickly scanned the surroundings, trying to find the real Luo Lin. It's really a powerful attack. It's a pity. Luo Lin had already appeared in the bushes. Looking at the person who had just shot the powerful bullet, he easily chopped off the opponent's head. At this moment, Luo Lin's figure flashed and appeared tens of meters away again. Unfortunately, it's just a manipulated puppet. Luo Lin looked at the detached young man whose corpse fell from the tree. It seems that there is no means of self-explosion. Luo Lin looked at the corpse that fell on the ground, and turned to look in the direction he came from. You were really cautious. Before the battle, are you ready to retreat? Luo Lin chuckled, and galloped in the direction he came from. Damn. The picture of the middle-aged man's right eye suddenly disappearing made his expression extremely ugly, especially when he saw the Gatling machine gun in front of him. He felt extremely distressed. It took him a lot of work to get it. However, now is not the time to worry about these things. The middle-aged man looked at the figure in the monocular in his right eye but couldn't see it at all with an ugly expression. Without the slightest hesitation, the middle-aged man got up and jumped into the driving seat of the jeep, started the jeep, and stepped on the accelerator. In just a few seconds, the jeep passed through the path in the forest and landed directly on the main road leading to the city not far away. Then gallop away in the direction away from the city. Chapter 90. Sure enough, it's an ability user of emitter. Luo Lin walked through the jungle. Nianqi has radiated out around the body, and he can clearly perceive everything within 100 meters around him. As he expected, one figure after another appeared on his way back. But when Luo Lin went there before, Luo Lin didn't find these people at all. No, these figures can no longer be called people, but purely tools or weapons, so before opening the circle, before Luo Lin could not find them. Treating human beings as weapons and manipulating them, using human lives as bullets, is really a cruel method. Luo Lin thought about the puppets he saw, especially the one that beat his double into a sieve. That guy should be the only one who was a nen before he became a puppet. That's why the bullets he bought by burning his life will have that kind of power. As for everyone else, even the puppet that fired the bullets at the beginning, and the puppet that he identified as nen at the beginning, probably should be only common people before being manipulated. It has to be said that although this method is cruel, the power it exerts is indeed quite astonishing. Under normal circumstances, even if the common people risk their lives, they will basically not be able to harm the nen people, but under the manipulation of the people behind the scenes, the attack, burning their lives in exchange for, is enough to wipe out the sexual benefits of Jolly Latu. However, there should be no common people who would want this ability. There is only one capable person, and the rest are all common people. The conditions for him to manufacture and manipulate weapons should be very harsh. The ability of manipulator is used to transform weapons and bullets, and transmuter is used to maintain the power of psychological bullets. The puppet that sniped me at the beginning was only 800 meters away from me, that is to say, the maximum range of his transmuter's power may not exceed 1 kilometer, so the distance he can manipulate the puppet should be similar. Quote, if it's only 1 kilometer. The location distribution of those puppets appeared in Luo Lin's mind, and he thought of the road leading to the city not far away. It should be around here. Luo Lin jumped high from the mountain forest, his eyes swept across the straight road, and then he saw a jeep crazily leaving in the distance. Did you guess wrong? Luo Lin tilted his head. He originally thought that the killer would drive into the city, betting that he would kill the killer in the city in a fair manner. But, it's very convenient for me. Luo Lin chased after the jeep again, his thoughts gathered in his fingertips. Damn. The middle-aged man had only driven 100 meters on the road when a familiar figure appeared in his rearview mirror and kept approaching. The middle-aged man's face paled instantly, and his face became even more ugly when he saw that his speed had just increased to 100 per hour. It's a pity that he has already stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and he doesn't have the ability to speed up the process of speeding up the car. Get out of here quickly. The middle-aged man shouted with a ferocious face. Next second, several figures rushed out from the nearby forest and rushed towards Luo Lin. These figures were obviously the 5 people who stopped Luo Lin at first. I saw those 5 people rushing towards Luo Lin from all directions. Each of them was filled with spiritual energy, their figures swelled rapidly, and they looked like they were about to explode. Obviously, the weapon transformed by these 5 people is a bomb. The middle-aged killer's escape direction was not chosen randomly. According to Luo Lin's speed, he could only go in this direction before the 5 body bombs could successfully intercept Luo Lin. The middle-aged killer shared the perspective of the weapon through the binoculars in his right eye. Looking at Luo Lin, who was close at hand, the middle-aged killer roared crazily. Go to hell. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions sounded, and the flames of the explosion were accompanied by the blasted human blood. The explosion scene was extremely bloody. However, the middle-aged killer at this time was not surprised at all. Instead, he looked in horror at the jeep that could no longer be controlled by the steering wheel. 0. Asking for flowers. In an instant, he realized that his wheels had been blown up, and as for who was blown up, it doesn't matter. Damn, the middle-aged man shouted angrily, quickly pushed the door, and quickly left the out-of-control jeep. As an N, even if the speed of the car exceeds 100 kilometers when it loses control, it can still leave very easily. Rolled twice on the ground and landed safely, but the middle-aged killer was not at all happy at this time, but looked in front of him in horror. Who else is standing there? Not Luo Lin. The Luo Lin at this time was completely the same as what he saw just now, and even a trace of blood was stained on his body. Obviously, the body bomb he had hoped for before did not hurt Luo Lin at all. Monster. This guy is a monster. The middle-aged killer screamed in his heart with a face full of horror. I got you. Luo Lin showed a bright smile to the middle-aged killer. However, in the eyes of the middle-aged killer at this time, this smile is no different from the god of death. Don't kill me, don't kill me, I can tell you who asked me to kill you. The middle-aged killer shouted for a long time. No need, I know better than you who sent you here. Luo Lin looked at the middle-aged killer calmly, and his figure flew past him in a flash. The eyes of the middle-aged killer, who was still full of horror just now, gradually became dull, and he fell to the ground. Aside from manipulating weapons, skill is not worth mentioning at all, so is it just a test this time? Luo Lin looked overhead. Although it was very subtle, with his strong visual ability, Luo Lin could indeed see where a bird formed by Nian Qi was slowly dissipating. The bird obviously came with the middle-aged killer, and its purpose is naturally to see his methods. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.